Okay, I guess I'll call commencement to the meeting here at 9:30. For attendance, everybody is here currently except for Councillor Hughes, which I believe she's on her way. And I'd ask for a motion for adoption to the agenda. Councillor Mackay?
I was so close, I almost didn't get it.
Yeah.
That the January 20th, 2026, agenda be adopted as presented.
Thank you very much. Will you move that to a vote? Wonderful. That motion passed 6-0. We have no appointments or business arising from appointments evidently, and I would ask for an approval of the minutes for the Standing Committee of the Whole meeting minutes from December 9th, 2025. Councillor Mackay?
Wow. Will that be Standing Committee of the Whole meeting minutes of December 9th, 2025 be adopted as presented?
Thank you very much. We can move that to a vote. And that passed unanimous. That passed. That only showed up. Yeah. Sorry, Councillor Mackay did.
Sorry, we'll have to redo that.
Yeah.
We didn't capture all the votes correctly, so we'll just have to redo the vote.
Thank you. We will take that to a vote again. Thank you. And that motion passed 6 with 1 absent unanimously. Thank you. Okay, we will move it to, we will start the presentations this morning with 6.1, which is our snow and ice control. Mr. Fletcher will open it up to you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mayor. I'll turn it right over to the team. They're just getting the screen shared up. And so I will turn it over to Director of Public Operations. In fact, do you have anything, Alex? No, I'll turn it right over to my left here to Director of Public Operations, who can introduce the team and they can get on with it. Thank you.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. Thank you for having us here today. We've got our Public Operations leadership team from Transportation Operations. So with me is Ms. Louise Stewart and Mr. John Potter, and we're here today to talk to you about our snow and ice control procedures, policies. And it's an interactive opportunity for you to ask questions about what our processes are. And at this time, I'll turn it over to Mr. Potter.
Thank you, Tim. Good morning, Mayor and Council. My name is John Potter. I'm the Manager, Transportation Operations and Waste Management for the City of St. Albert. A little bit of my background before we kick off. I was born in Montreal, moved to St. Albert in 1980. The reason why I mention that, I've seen snow. There's lots of talk about the East right now. I've seen that. And been living in St. Albert most of my life. I've been in the snow business now, delivering snow and ice control for about 23 years. Snow and ice control is my passion. I'm very excited to share some of those, that passion with you today. So why are we here today? We're here to explain the science, the methodology, the issues, how we manage resident concerns, and changes and potential changes to our snow and ice control program. History of the policy, the review and what the policy says. The policy was reviewed last in 2019. Answer any questions you may have around snow and ice control. And please, throughout my presentation, I'm sure there'll be some questions that come up. I could just ask you to make note of the slide. We'll come back to the questions at the end. If it's really burning, yearning, I can certainly answer the question at a time. I'm pretty easy that way in terms of adjusting. Okay, so we're going to start off with some of the science around that's involved in snow and ice control and what our team looks at when we're dealing with, you know, decision making on what attack we're gonna take on in any particular weather. So we monitor weather. We use the Environment Canada website. office, we use ARWIS stations, which are those little sensors around the province found on 511 Alberta. Those are integral parts of what we use. For example, so I tend to look, if a storm is coming in as an example, I'm looking at what the storm is doing, how fast it's moving. And then I switch over to the ARWIS stations. I'm looking at how that storm is impacting the road surface before, during, and then again after. And then that'll give us some idea of when it hits St. Albert, how we're going to attack it. I'll explain a little bit more about mixed design and sand and salt and readying the equipment on later on. But that's just kind of an overview on what we look at in terms of the weather monitoring. It's very important in snow and ice control to look at not only the ambient air temperature or the dew point, the wind, but the most important is the asphalt temperature. So that's why the ARWIS stations are critically important to our operation, because those are giving us what the asphalt temperature is. And that allows us to adjust the mix designs in our sand and salt application. It's all about salt reactivity. So if the pavement's cold, the salt sits there dormant if the air is cold. We adjust our mix designs accordingly. So when the asphalt's warmer, it's a sunny day, we're gonna add more salt to help keep that snow and ice from bonding to the pavement. Those are operational decisions that we make, plowing versus our sanding. And then we look at the forecast, short, medium, and long term. A recent example of this was just after Christmas when we were facing with day after day snow accumulation. What's it going to do in the future? So we're monitoring our snowpack in our residential area. A decision's going to have to be made soon on whether we residential plow. So what am I looking at? I'm looking at long-term forecasts. Am I going to get warm temperatures? Is it forecasted for warm temperatures, which is with a heavy snowpack, that's going to definitely affect mobility in our local neighborhoods. So those are the kinds of things when I'm looking at long-term. We also look at what our climate's doing. People are saying our climate is changing, or the scientists are changing. So what types of things do we have to adjust to? In my experience, no two winters are alike. But we have to be ready for any type of circumstance or any type of weather when it arises. So we look at the climate resiliency, our freeze-thaw cycles, how many rain events are we getting, so we look at averages and those kinds of things. And the reality is that we budget for those averages. And then what I have noticed in the last few years is with the weather, for example, the city and the metro region is becoming very big. So the types of storms that are coming in, it's what's referred to as a heat island, as an example. Those types of situations, so the weaker systems that come in actually can split and go around. We saw that a couple of years ago, if you're watching radar and so forth, it go around and then kind of get stuck. Place in St. Albert and Strathcona or Sherwood Park as an example, we got more snow than the metro region. That is one of the reasons why. So the next slide here is just an example of the weather office looking at a 7-day forecast. Anything outside of about 48 hours is pretty hit and miss. It's really based on models. The one thing that I have noticed the last few years is that 24 hours out has been extremely accurate compared to what it used to be. So, those are things that we have to continually monitor, and our teams, our team leads and our supervisors are certainly watching that weather. They're all They're all well versed in looking at the 511 app and our weather app. And then here's just an example of the radar. So our next slide is just an example of what our norms are. So this has been in social media. This has been in the media a lot last few days, or the last couple of weeks rather. You know, what are our averages? Our averages are always changing. It's good to look at historic information, but it's also good to look at maybe the last 5 years. So, you know, if you can see the temperatures there, but our average basically for December, January, and February, average snowfall is 51 centimeters. Our yearly is only 121. So in those 3 months, that's when we're getting half of our snow. The heavier snows tend to happen in the spring. Now, if you look at that average over those 3 months, we got that average in a 2-week period from about December 17th to about January 3rd. I think it finally stopped snowing. Within that time, we got about 60 centimeters. So that's where they're talking about the 400% above the average and so forth. So, you know, those kinds of things. I'll maybe explain a little bit more about how some of those challenges affected our operations. A little bit about methodology now. Snow and ice control is obviously driven by policy. I'd have to adhere to those policies and the service levels with it. So we plan and budget for average winter, not the extreme. So we have internal forces. We have a number of pieces of the different types of equipment and teams that are on shift 24 hours a day, 7 days a week from mid-October to mid-April. That's basically winter. So when we're not meeting those service levels with our internal forces, that's when we supplement it with hired. We typically use hired equipment to plow and remove snow from the roadway. We look at the 5 R's of snow and ice control. So that talks about the right amount, the right mix design, the right time, the right place, and then the 5th one is record it. So we talk about having the right amount of equipment, right amount of material. When it comes to material, we want to put out the material that's going to have the desired effect. No more, no less. You know, sand, salt, what the mix design is, the right design, and that goes back to monitoring the weather and appropriate picking the appropriate mix design for the location. What time of day, some of the decision making involved in that. So if we get a day where it's, you know, in January, sunny day, it's going to go to +2. And then overnight it's going to drop to -30. We're not going to run out and melt snow, because when we do that, that melted snow is going to turn to ice. And that kind of defeats the purpose. So we're always, and a sunny day in January is different than a sunny day in March. The sun angle, as an example, that the days are shorter. So those are all things that we're looking about when we're talking right time. And then the right place. We obviously, when we're going out, we're route sanding. We're going to hit the intersections first. We're going to hit the school zones. We're going to hit where stop and go traffic is, and so forth. And the last R is recorded. So we've been using GIS as an example lately for that. We want to be recording what we've done, what attack that we took on that particular event, and we're gonna do an after action review with those events and seeing what we could do better. If we don't record it, we can't learn. If weather is changing, then we have to be able to adjust to that moving forward. And that's one of the ways we do that. There's lots of variables in snow and ice control. As I mentioned before, we have no two winters are alike. We have environmental variables, climate resiliency. Is the weather patterns changing? Are the freeze-thaw cycles more often, more extreme? Our geographic location is probably our biggest one. And that's been in the news a lot and on social media channels. The metro region of Edmonton is like no other really in the world. We're one of the only regions that uses abrasives. We typically, our policies are designed to remove the snow rather than melt the snow. We have frost in the ground. That's what makes us different from Calgary even. They're a little warmer, so forth. But the reality is they don't have frost. They don't get the frost in the ground that we do. So even when in the springtime, as an example, when that's coming out, you'll see that moisture as it's coming out on the roadway, and then you get a wind and instantly you have black ice. So those are just some of the challenges and the variables that we face that are different. And then just, making sure we're adequately equipped and resourced adequately. So again, with our internal forces, with our internal equipment, looking at how much the city is growing, and adjusting, asking for that equipment, asking for those FTEs prior to us actually needing them. That's the key. And we're looking at for the average, and then supplementing with hired equipment as needed. Some of the things when we're equipping and making sure that we're resourced, we got to consider equipment breakdowns. We got to consider adequate training. And we also cross-train all our employees that they can operate every type of equipment that we own here at the City of St. Albert. So some quick stats in terms of our material usage lately. So I'll leave it up there for a quick view, but basically our 5-year average of sand has been about 3,900 tons. Our chip material, 195 tons, and salt, 600 tons. And when I say salt, that's sodium chloride, not calcium chloride, and that's in form of rock salt. So to date, from 2025 to today, we've used approximately 4,800 tons of sand, 550 ton of chip, and 630 ton of salt. So we're above average, and certainly we've only had winter for about a month, maybe a 5-week period. We didn't get much again. It was setting up very similar to last 2 winters. We had, basically at the start, end of November kind of, it's starting. So why have we used so much? Basically, we were getting bombarded every day with a accumulation of snow that maybe sometimes it was enough to plow, sometimes it wasn't. It was colder, so we had to go out and put down abrasives because people were having problems with traction. We use chip material also in our parking lots. So as an example, last week when we got to three days of around 10 degrees, a lot of that snow and ice residual that was on the parking lot melted, and then now it's cold enough to freeze. So that's what we're going in around doing now is laying that chip material around for traction for vehicles and for the public walking. Okay. Next, I'm going to turn to what our road. So within Public Works, we have two teams. They work together and collaboratively. We call it the roads team and the parks team. So the roads teams maintain 483 lane kilometers of priority 1, 2, and 3 road network and 179.5 kilometers of local roads, which include about 340 cul-de-sacs. What do they do? So they sand, both route and spot sanding. So route sanding occurred, like as an example, last night. You know, we had maybe 1 to 2 centimeters. They're out there hitting every row, every priority 1, 2, and 3, and sanding the roads. In the morning, super important to be paying attention to the school zones, any bridge decks, dealing with freeze thaw locations and hills and shady spots. As we get closer into the spring, as an example, when it's cooler overnight, our bridge decks really get impacted by the sunrise and sunset. So timing becomes super important over that. You know, looking at the things like the dew point and so forth. You know, a bridge deck will get icy very quickly, even if we haven't had snow. Then also they do plowing, both route and spot plowing. So when a storm comes in, they head out in teams. Our priority 1, St. Albert Trail, it's quite wide. Usually 5, sometimes 6 trucks head out, depending how much snow and how much we're bringing across. And I'll show you some pictures later on of the trucks that we use and the wing plows and so forth. And then we're out plowing our priorities. So the next few slides is our priority 1s. As you can see on the slide, both St. Albert Trail and Ray Gibbon Drive within 8 hours after a snow event. Okay, our priority 2s are also within 8 hours after a snow event. So when looking at the amount of equipment and resourcing adequately, correctly, if we're not meeting those service levels with our internal forces, that's when we're bringing in hired equipment to help us achieve those goals and meet those service levels. Priority 3s. Those are our collector and our commercial roads. Our priority is within 16 hours after a snow event. Rural roads, which are our gravel road inventory, within 24 hours after a snow event. Collector roads, removal normally occurs around 20 to 30 centimeters of snow accumulation. So when we're plowing our collector network, we're doing that typically with our truck plows. They're going through our collector routes. When we get to a point where we can't, the volume of snow, and we face that over the holiday period, we have to remove that snow because it's just getting too much for our truck plows. Our truck plows can only maneuver the snow around, you know, somewhat. Graders are better at articulating the snow and moving it around to where we want it. But our policy says after 20, 30 centimeters of snow, we come in, we'll plow with graders to the middle, blow that snow and remove it. So we've had about 60 centimeters. We've been through the collectors to date this winter season twice. So our residential roads are next. We monitor snowpack. So we haven't seen it this winter because the onslaught of the snow. We try to maintain a snowpack. So similar to what Edmonton does with their grooming and blading of their residential roads. So as an example, if a residential road's at 4.5, 5 centimeters, depending on how the snowpack is set up, it's pretty stable. It will rut. It will, it'll get a little bit bumpy. So we go in with an underbody truck plow and we groom that just like you would groom a run at Marmot, so that it's easier to navigate. Until such time as it gets above within that threshold of 6 to 9 centimeters. Now, timing, that kind of triggers that we can go into a residential removal. But again, we're looking at I monitor what the weather's doing. So as an example, if we're at 6.5 centimeters, we're allowed to initiate a residential removal, but we may be in a period where it's going to be -30 for couple of weeks. We may hold off because working with the equipment in those types of temperatures, it will really slow us down. The snowpack's not in danger of becoming unstable. Mobility is not going to be compromised. So those are types of decisions that could delay that. The opposite can happen as well. So within the policy, if mobility becomes a challenge, we can initiate a residential snow removal. We've seen that a few times. On December 29th, when the most recent residential plowing occurred, the snowpack on a citywide average was close to 12 centimeters, so 11.75. We stockpile in the cul-de-sacs. If you don't know, we stockpile the snow up into the center of the cul-de-sac, and then we remove that as resources allow. So we actually are still doing that. We should be done today and from our last residential removal. And then downtown, removal, plowing normally occurs after about 5 to 10 centimeters of snow accumulation. Again, this winter, we've done that actually 5 times now. We did another cycle last week where we cleaned up some windrows from some of the warm weather as an example. Some of the stuff, some of the residual snow that was left in the parking lane along the side of the road. As it warmed up, we were able to remove that, put a windrow up, and then we removed it at night the other day. Okay, so some of the methodology around snow removal. And we're going to look at, we have to, so we're one of our geographical advantages is it comes to how our roads network is set up. We have a boulevard on the majority of our roads in St. Albert, including our local roads. That is by far our biggest advantage. We're probably roughly 95% boulevard sidewalk in the city of St. Albert, and 5% monolithic, which means where the sidewalks immediately adjacent to the roadway. Most of our partners in the region are the opposite. So what that allows us to do is plow using different types of equipment, like for example, a truck plow. Our truck plows go through and are allowed, because of that, go through very quickly and put the snow up onto the boulevard. If we had the opposite, it would mean that we would need to use graders to do that activity more often and place the snow in the parking lane. So that's a huge advantage. So now, as an example of this last, 2 weeks that we had, since we've had the snow, we've been doing those types of activities where we're removing the snow now as a temporary. So we use the boulevard as a temporary storage. And when it becomes full, which many of them are right now on the arterial networks, we're going to go in at night and pull that snow back off the boulevard and so that we gain that capacity back for our temporary snow storage site. And then as we get closer to spring, when that boulevard starts to melt, the freeze thaw doesn't impact the sidewalks adjacent to it. So that's kind of twofold. And it restores the capacity for the rest of the season as well, because the reality is we're only about, we're halfway through winter basically. So, and then, some of our monolithic, we don't have a lot of monolithic walks, but we do remove snow. So we'll put the windrow up adjacent to the walk, and then we'll come in later on and we'll remove those locations too, just so that we can restore parking in a lot of those areas. We also then after plowing's done and the types of things that we do, we look at our school zones and our parking lots as well. So removing the snow around the school zones to make sure people, our students, our parents can safely navigate in and out of the schools without too much trouble. Our buses and our students can get off the bus easy. The parking lots, so we're just really catching up on those now. You know, as an example, there was a big event at Service Place last week. We made it a priority to make sure that we got rid of those piles that we had stored there as to not impact parking for the event that they had. So the types of equipment we use and what the equipment can do and what its limitations are, we look at those types of things too. So I've already mentioned the limitations around the truck plow. The truck plow is really good at taking the snow off the road. It's not great at placing it. So, you know, having those types, so that it's a combination of both things. So, you know, those are the types of things that we look at there. All our truck plows have a combination box, which means that one, they can be a sander or they can be hauling snow as well. So that helps us too. So they're all combo units. I'll show you some pictures here in a few minutes. We have truck plows that have an underbody plow, or they may have a front plow. They also may have a front plow with a wing. So a number of years ago, when we put in the wings, it basically that's kind of how we dealt with some of our growth at that time. A truck plow with a wing is 1.5 trucks because the added distance that they can plow along in a plow team. The other thing that's important is cross training all our team. So we need to be, you know, our team members can be in a couple different pieces of equipment every shift that they're on. So you may be in a sander truck plow unit at the start of their shift, and then, you know, after lunch, they're headed out in a loader to help remove snow in a parking lot, as an example. That's kind of twofold, that it allows us to be more more resilient to adjust to different conditions, but it also, if someone's sick or a key team member is off for the day, it allows us to backfill. So what do we do when it's not snowing? Okay, so, you know, as I mentioned, we were on shift in mid-October. Similar to the last 3 winters, we didn't have too much to do, but we had lots to do. So when it's not snowing, when we're not out plowing and sanding, we still do spot sanding. We haul the snow, kind of the preventative maintenance on our equipment, and filling of potholes as an example. In the fall, when we're waiting for it to snow, we're doing that training. So that we've had a lot of, you know, we go through cycles, and it tends to go with the oil, you know, the different booms in St. Albert. We've had a lot of turnover the last couple of years. And the reality is they haven't really seen a winter that's normal. We've had 2 seasonably winters. So now they're well in it. You know, they've had a lot of good experience the last 5 weeks or so. Then we move into our springtime operations. So including, as I mentioned, removing the snow from the boulevards, moving from the ditches, pushing back windrows, kind of helping precipitate the melt along, breaking up similar to what you do on your lawn, breaking up those snow piles so that they melt a little quicker. And then we also look after our drainage areas and we have historical information on where we see challenges during the spring. Around catch basins, we'll go out and clean up catch basins, but we're looking after those as a preventative measure. Okay, next, I'm going to show you some of the equipment that I've been talking about here for the last little bit. This is a sander truck plow. So as you can see, this one's equipped with a front mounted plow and a side wing. Usually that allows us to plow usually about 1.5 lanes at a time. So we're looking at a typical plow team on St. Albert Trail when it's being plowed up would be about 5 trucks. So quite wide. And then that box that it's equipped with can also hold sand, and there's a spreader on it. This one's mid-body underneath the truck, but it also can haul snow. This is an example of the plow chicane on St. Albert Trail. So as you can see, they're kind of offset of each other so they don't overlap. Even though it's a red light, they try to stay as close to each other as possible. This can be a challenge for us. People try to get in and out of our between our trucks, which is obviously depending on how much snow that they're pulling across, which can be significant. It can be an unsafe situation. And just another picture of our teams working. This is a loader. We have a number of different attachments. A loader is quite a versatile piece of equipment. Obviously, we load our material for our trucks with it. So that's the example on the left there has a bucket. This is the one on the right has a plow. The ends of that plow can hydraulically cast out. So that can it acts as a little bit as a plow, but it also can act as a bucket for pushing up snow into a pile. That has a width of 16 feet. So when we're doing large parking lots like we have at Service, they can do it very quickly. Just a couple more examples, different types of attachments. One of the tools that we put into our toolbox a few years ago is what we call an icebreaker. This is what it goes on the front end loader. The picture on the left shows that. The picture on the right is a social media post from the other day that showed the icebreaker out working. It's a very useful tool, especially in cul-de-sacs in the springtime, where you get that. Well, even last week where we had 10 degrees, we had spring for 3 days. In cul-de-sacs, because of the pilots, all the water filters off the roofs, off the property, and gets onto the road. In January, even if it's 10 degrees, that water's not going anywhere. Like, it gets colder and colder as it moves around the gutter. It's eventually going to turn to ice. That ice is very compact, very dense, and it's very difficult to remove. Even if you move a grader in, you're putting that down pressure on against the grain. So this icebreaker will go in, break up the ice in the gutter, and then our grader will come in and clean it up. It's a very, very useful tool. We also have 3 large industrial snow blowers that attach to our loader. That is primarily how we remove snow on our roads. We windrow the snow onto the road, and then our snow blower comes along and blows it into, and dump trucks usually, and takes it off to an engineered snow site. This is our grader with the wing installed. Primarily, the wing is used in the country, pushing back ditches, pushing back snow where it's flatter. That can create, it accomplishes two things: gets the snow further off the road structure. It also sets up a bit of a barrier for the wind to not be so, not impact the road as much when the wind picks up. So, you know, that's obviously a very useful tool and much needed when our country roads in, you know, our area, our rural areas have a lot of snowfall. A few years ago, you know, whenever we can put a vehicle, add a plow to a vehicle within our operations, it's a plus. So this is an example of our team leads each have a plow on the front of their pickup truck. This unit's got our salt dog on it. So a number of years ago, we put in place that we don't sand our parking lots with pickled sand. We use chip exclusively. So that accomplishes two things. Salt and sand does not get tracked into the facility, which can cause havoc on the automatic doors. It can you know, it's salt on a concrete surface. If you're cleaning that, it's multiple times cleaning it. It's just not very pleasant. But the biggest reason why we do it is that during the freeze thaw cycles, you know, 3 or 4 degrees during the day, the sand sits there and the water freezes over top of it. If it's same conditions and there's chip materials, it's larger, that chip material will actually protrude a certain layer of ice. So provide traction for longer with less material. And it doesn't have any sodium chloride in it. So when I was talking earlier about blading residentials, you know, this is an example of an underbody plow blade. The top picture is a picture of what the plow blade looks like. The bottom is what we call an ice blade. So when we're going in and grooming that snowpack or trying to take ice off the road if it's extremely cold, we're mounting our equipment with the bottom one. Sometimes you'll see grooves in the ice over top the surface. The ice blade is very effective at grooming or blading that residential snowpack as well. Okay, we're going to move over to our parks team now. These are examples of our priorities within our sidewalk and trail system. They do things the same way, so they have their priorities as well. Our priority 1 is our Red Willow Trail System, St. Albert Place, our transit terminals, and then they're actually swept to snow-free surface within 8 hours. Our priority 2s are all our arterial sidewalks and trails, collector sidewalks and trails, and our bus stops. The clearing occurs on those 2 to 5 centimeters of snow accumulation within 48 hours. And then our priority 3s are all our internal trails, our connector sidewalks, clearing 2 to 5 centimeters, plow within 72 hours, and normally after completion of priority 1s. So they clear snow on approximately 200-kilometer sidewalks and trail systems, 8 hours a day, 7 days a week. Our brooms are mounted on John Deere little tractors, our plow-mounted sidewalk machines, and our hand shoveling and backpack blowing. So like the roads, the sidewalks are done in priority order, as I mentioned. And as shown on the previous slides, the parks teams move through their priorities until complete. This team also is responsible for clearing St. Albert Place, city properties, stairs, bridges, bridge sidewalks, bus stops, and bulb outs, often done by hand crews. After a successful pilot of a sidewalk icebreaker a few years back, we purchased our own as well for our sidewalk team. This icebreaker actually goes on a sidewalk machine, which I'll show you a picture of here in a second. So like the loader, this is the sidewalk teams and parks team's best friend. A number of different attachments can be done with this municipal tractor. We have different size plows, reversible plows. We have a broom. We also have a little trailer that pulls, can sand the sidewalks as well. And snow blowers when we're pushing back the windrow on a particular sidewalk or trail. And as I mentioned, the icebreaker. So this is the one on the left there. Actually, both have the sanding unit on the back, as you can see. And then our brooms, which we're doing our priority ones with. So what material do we use on the sidewalks? We use it the same. We use the same material basically. So in our sand salt shed, we stockpile to get ready for winter about 6,000 ton of sand, mixed with a little bit of salt to keep the pile from freezing, even though it's kept inside. And then we have chip material that's kept there as well. And then we bring in our salt and adjust our mixing designs. So it's basically, we stockpile at about 2% salt. We have added salt that we can add to the mix. We can also add chip material to the sand as well. So we have lots of different types of materials that we can put on our roads and sidewalks in order to deal with the conditions that we're presented with. Pickled sand is just that. That's when I say it's mixed with the street sand. It's called pickling it. So it goes up when we're loading it, when we're stockpiling in the shed. It's running up a conveyor, and then we're spraying on the sand on the conveyor as it goes off with liquid salt. Here's the example of our I think it's a snow lion. So it's very effective at taking ice off sidewalks. As we know, there's certain times in the spring where ice, as I mentioned in the cul-de-sacs, same thing happens on the sidewalks. And it can be very rapidly where it becomes very dense and very difficult to take off. So just our bridge decks. So those are the types of things that all our parks teams does. We sand, we remove snow from the transit centers, and we would have to send out hand crews to deal with the snow on bridge decks and so forth. Okay. So within snow and ice control, it's not just about all what we're doing. It's about what others are doing as well. We really focus on regional collaboration, and that becomes sometimes difficult. Sometimes it goes really smoothly. A couple of examples of regional collaboration. We use we take our snow to an engineered snow site. We use the city of Edmonton's as an example for that. We information share. We do that a couple of different ways. We hold meetings. We rely on our networks of colleagues in the snow and ice control business. You know, those types of things. And then we have a Northern Ideas group as well. So we do that across the board, really. We do that a lot in waste as well. We want to know what others are doing, what are successes, what are our challenges. An example of this the other day, we were having problems with a different type of equipment. It's a new piece. They've made a modification. I asked around on others if they were seeing the same thing, so that we could help our equipment team troubleshoot that and come up with a resolve and get that piece of equipment back on the road as quickly as we could. So we have to maintain relationships with the city of Edmonton, our provincial contractors, Sturgeon County and Strathcona County. That's also important when we're delivering snow and ice control, so that we work with those and collaborate with them. We don't want to be having a situation where we're going down Campbell Road and then all of a sudden the snow, we just, you know, pull up our plows and leave a wall of snow. So that kind of collaboration, communication, when we're seeing challenges like that, that information has to be shared. Okay, next we're just gonna discuss some of the issues and challenges that we're faced with each winter. So the issues during the winter season can be many. The variables can be many. You know, we've had more freezing rain events lately, which can suspend waste collection and transit service. Typical issues that we see: icy sidewalks, freeze thaw sanding requests, blocked driveways, sandbox filling requests, drifting, flash freezing, all things that we've experienced the last few weeks. Having to haul snow to an engineered snow site, that's mandated by the province, so that you know, so our distance traveled, we need more trucks to haul that snow there. The city is growing, including with annexation, trying to forecast that growth, working with planning and determining, you know, helping, you know, seeing what kind of road design that they're gonna implement. You know, that type of collaboration is important. To making sure we've got a lot of, we've added some equipment recently. We're going to be adding more in the next few years, and so that we have that equipment when we need it. So when that growth occurs, we already have it. We're not playing catch up. Service or delivery of our Sander truck plow units are about 18 months out right now. Our garbage trucks are about a year and a half to 2 years out. So those things we have to consider. We have to pre-plan. We have to be proactive rather than reactive when it comes to growth and equipment. Street furniture. So we always compete we've got grade boulevards to put our snow on. That's its primary function. We're always competing for that space though. The developers want to put utility boxes, signs, light posts, and other things on the boulevard. We'd rather it to be trees and snow. Ideally, that's the most effective for us. So some more of the challenges, you know, we're growing, obviously. Our yard, we have one yard. It's taking us longer to get out to certain areas of the city. Increased traffic, increased infrastructure. You know, as I mentioned, the street furniture before as well. The workforce demographics change from generation to generation. Those are all things that need to be looked at. The pedestrian activated streetlights on St. Albert Trail and other pedestrian crossings can be challenging, but something that, you know, we have to adjust to. The hills during a storm need constant attention. The big one nowadays, though, is public perception, social media, and the mainstream media. So none more obvious in the last few weeks. All kinds of social media posts, all kinds of media stories in the news. It's always, you know, it's always being compared to Edmonton. They tend to get the media, the mainstream media, messaging that goes out there. So the one thing that we've done and made a conscious decision on here doing lately is really focusing on social media and putting our message out, and so that can impact what our teams are doing, what our residents are doing rather. You know, if we want them to get the cars off the street. So when we do a residential plowing, let them inform them what's going on here in St. Albert, because we don't get that luxury of having it broadcast on YegWave or on our mainstream media platforms. So we've made a conscious decision, really focusing on ours. And that's where we all can work together, you know, like that's, you know, get that message out when we're, you know, when we're trying to understand what's happening. And the importance of today is hopefully, you know, having that you can share that information, that you can use your platforms and your networks to get that message out. And it's also important to have a consistent message out there, so that you don't confuse people. They get bombarded with messaging, and having that consistent message and very precise. If you want the cars off the street, say that and only that. So then, and some of the, you know, spring's going to be here around the corner. What we do to facilitate that melting, I've already talked a little bit about that with the snow on the boulevards. We break it up. We haul some of it away. Usually that, as soon as you get the gutter clear on the, you know, on the road, it helps really precipitate the melt. That melt water has somewhere to go. And usually we'll start getting the catch basin time spring rolls around. Our hired equipment. So this has been in the media a lot. Our hired equipment compared to the rest of Canada is very expensive. Ottawa, Winnipeg, have been around for a while. I've heard it all. The reality is a grader out east is about 2.5 times less than what we pay for it here. So it can be costly, very costly, up to, you know, 50 to 60% more than what other municipalities are spending. And the other thing, and I can't remember, like this has been in place for as long as I've been in the snow business, clearing windrows, blocking driveways. Metro Edmonton is the only place in Canada that does that. I have many childhood memories of Montreal and working feverishly on clearing our driveway, and then the plows or this big industrial snow blower coming and burying it all over again. It's probably not something that's going to go away though. It's that service level that's been set now. It's been accepted, but it is costly. You know, when we do residential plowing, we bring in a grader and 3 skid steers with it. So it's an hourly rate on that crew is expensive. So, so how we manage resident concerns. So, obviously with the advent of social media, We have many platforms, many different avenues that we can submit customer service requests. Here are just some numbers. We can go, an average day is probably 10 or 20 customer service requests. We can go to 100 plus very quickly, as you could imagine. Our public operations and admin team assess each call, try to determine the priority, and then dispatch it for inspection. Our goal is to inspect every CSR within a 24-hour period. During busy times, as you could imagine, that's tough. Just as some examples of the number of CSRs that we've had the last 4 years, 2698. 2022, 2023 was a little bit more of a normal winter. 23, 24, that's the one we had a few freezing rain events, but very low snowfall. 1,500 last year. And then already to date, we're at just under or just over 1,100. So that's basically in a 5-week period, and we're about halfway through winter. So some of our examples of asset growth over the years, previous recent growth was covered off by adding the wing plows to our trucks. We added a growth truck plow recently. We'll be adding and a grader and a loader as well. We're already anticipating growth units to be coming in the next growth cycle, capital cycle. In 2018, the winter of 2018, oh, sorry. No, I skipped one page. Some of our recent changes, we suspended the use of calcium chloride as an anti-icing material. So we used to go out and in advance of the storm, similar to the north part of the Henday, they use a liquid calcium chloride. It basically works like PAM on a frying pan. It prevents that snow and ice bonding to the road, to the asphalt, allowing it to be easier to mechanically remove it after. In 2018, 2019, we went to from 24/7, or we went to a 24/7 rotation with our road crews, shifting from 24/5. So we didn't work 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. On the weekend, we just supplement that with people on standby. The use of chip materials in parking lots, as I mentioned, we covered our sand number of years ago. That allows us to not put as much salt, as much pickle into the sand. Therefore, and it not being as lumpy, and it doesn't freeze as often because of the snow's not falling on it and adding moisture to it. So it's actually drier material going out and hitting the road, which is definitely an advantage. Unfortunately, we no longer have a sand recycling option as we used to. We used to pick up our sand in the spring and take it to Edmonton, and they had a sand recycling program, which we would buy back. So we reuse the sand. Unfortunately, that's no longer an option. As I mentioned before, grooming residential with ice blades, dealing with ice complaints this way as well as using the icebreaker, the loader-mounted icebreaker and the sidewalk-mounted icebreaker. And then just some of our communication strategies have changed with the acceptance of social media, our website, and videos on snow removal and the like. And then I mentioned already some of our recent changes in terms of our equipment, loader and sidewalk machine mounted icebreakers. We use GIS for tracking now. Each operator has a map. an interactive map that they can go on and show when they're working on a particular site, pinpoint it, and check it off when it's done. And then we didn't do it this time. I was certainly considering changing how we plow cul-de-sacs this year. That changed when the volume of snow that we have. One of the areas within the metro region will take that snow out of the cul-de-sac and put it in a windrow so that it's blown away rather than stockpile it in the middle. So I wanted to try that. Unfortunately, there was just too much snow and I wanted to get it out of the cul-de-sac quickly. The one thing that we did do though is we brought in, normally we would just stockpile it. And once we were done, we'd go back and remove it. Because of the warm temperatures that were forecasted and the volume of snow, I was concerned about being able to navigate around the outside of the cul-de-sac. So we did bring in some extra trucks right off the bat to start hauling that snow, or at least some of it. So some of the changes that, to consider in the future or near future or distance or generate some conversation at the end of this presentation. Implementation of a parking ban, pros and cons to it. The additional snow removal on collectors. So right now we're funded for 2 removal cycles. And then potentially, this has been in the news as well. Maybe consider implementing anti-icing again, using calcium chloride to do that. And that's it for my presentation. Thank you. We'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much. Extremely informative. Before we get to questions, I just want to publicly acknowledge the effort that you guys have put in to get the city back to manageable. I've mentioned to Tim a couple of times the messages I've received from the public about how fantastic of a job the city's done to manage the snow. So thank you very much. And when comparing to other municipalities, it's evident we are certainly a benchmark for it. So congratulations on that. I'll open it up to questions and comments. I believe Councillor McKay can start.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for the shout out, Mr. Mayor, because that was going to be my first one too. And thanks for the passion, John. I know from other presentations that you live and breathe snow. Get a life. A couple of really kind of easy questions first, and then maybe get into some of the ones that you're looking at on the end slide. So, I mean, I know Edmonton puts GPS on their actual trucks. Have we thought about doing that, or is there a cost? I know where you mentioned GIS and you can look around to see which neighborhoods are being hit, but have we looked at actually putting GPS units into our vehicles?
We have GPS on our units. We just don't have a way right now to actively display it on a website. There are challenges with it as well. And they're kind of seeing that the last couple of days. There a lot of social media is like, where are the plows, right? So there's advantages to it. There's disadvantages to it. We use it because they're working alone. It's a safety tool as well. They're tracked through an AVL system. Sometimes there, you want to look at, like, it's my opinion that we're not there yet. Yeah, it would be nice to get up, see where the plows are, and maybe plan how you're gonna get to work. I don't know if we're there yet. And the reality is that we're small enough still and resourced. Our arterial network gets done very quickly. And so is it really needed, I guess, but it is fun. I definitely want to look at maybe, naming our plows. I talked about living here, moving here in 1980. That is one thing that I noticed, like when the big front mount plows used to have names. One was Jaws, then Jaws 2 and so forth. And that's fun, right? So we definitely can look at things like that. Tim wants.
One of the things is as we are implementing City Works, it's one of the considerations we have is like John mentioned, we are set up now with the AVL and the technology is available. We're looking for an opportunity to make sure it's the right decision. As we're gathering that information and we've got the clarity, it's now making that connection so that our residents, so that our St. Albert stakeholders can have that visibility and be able to help with the movement of their vehicles. So it's definitely a consideration. We're preparing for the right opportunity to do it.
Yeah, fair enough. Thank you for the response. In addition to our roads, I know we get lots of feedback in relation, particularly our Red Willow Trail. I mean, it's a standard that we've decided that we wanted to keep it completely clear. But that comes with a cost. How much do the broom replacement brushes cost? It must be significant. Or do we go through quite a bit based on, we're increasing our Red Willow Trail almost yearly. Is that a significant cost to the city?
Thank you for the question. So the brooms are only on the priority 1 areas. And so that area has remained at a stagnant 14 kilometers. The actual growth then is accomplished with the sidewalk plows. And those typically, the plow blades are routinely changed, but they don't really break down depends on the pressure and how much down pressure there is as to how quickly they wear away. The brooms themselves consist of a series of cylindrical brooms on them. As they break down, you'll start to see debris along the edge of the trail. And so those get checked quite regularly. It's not that bad. You buy them in bulk and they'll only replace the certain sections that they need to be. But the more you're doing it on bare pavement, the quicker it will wear down. And yes, we'll go through several in a year.
Yeah, no, sorry. I thought we continued to that standard all the way through Red Willow Trail, but we're just doing it on that 14-kilometer route.
Yeah, just the priority 1 is broom to ground. The rest of it is all done with a plow. So anything like P2s, P3s, all the trails, all the sidewalks, all the connectors are all done with a sidewalk plow. They're quick, they can move. The broom can push it to the side, and that's only in the downtown area.
Yeah, that was what I was referring to, that downtown area. I know we go right to the Boudreaux Bridge with a broom. So I guess that constitutes downtown. One of the questions that we constantly get, or I constantly get, is because we broom the north side and the south side, but we don't broom the bridge deck that goes over. Is there a reason that I can continue to tell residents who phone me that why isn't the bridge deck broomed off on the pedestrian walkways?
So some of our bridges are too narrow for the equipment. And that's what it boils down to is the equipment can't physically get across without either damaging the bridge structure itself or the equipment. And that's where the hand crews that are associated with those pieces of equipment will come in with the shovels and remove the snow. We also don't want to be pushing the snow into the river. We actually try and get it to the edge to keep it on the grass.
Thanks. I appreciate that. I know in the past, we've received a few more complaints in relation to that because of mobility issues or joggers, for lack of a better term. They see some of those challenges, but that's consistent. What is the transportation costs? You were just touching on it a little bit, just to the environmental snow sites. And for our new counselors, we just can't just dump it anywhere. They have to be a provincial, I can't remember what the certification level is, but they have to be a certain approved site. But what are our costs? Do you know approximately? And does the city of Edmonton charge us a storage cost?
Yes, they have charged us. So we have a snow site in our growth charter, I believe, we, like, a snow site for our usage would probably run in the neighborhood of 7 to 10 million to build it. If you look at the snow site that Edmonton has, for example, their most recent one is Horse Hills. It has 3 large water melt areas that have different levels of release to sanitary to sanitary line to take that to Gold Bar for processing, basically. So that's the big cost is actually, you know, connecting in with that sanitary line to get that off to a treatments facilities. Thank you, Tim. So the other thing that's important that is a hard surface to work off of. So it's got roller compacted concrete and so forth. So it would be that, and then getting the land for it. It's been some time now since we've had a snow site, and Regan's been working on some of the other details about size and so forth. And when it comes to our satellite or our growth site, whatever you want to look, whatever you want to call it now. So we're getting to be big. We do need, if we want to consider moving like snow off of residential roads and the like as a potential change, then certainly we, you know, having our snow site would certainly be advantage and save some money.
But I think, Councillor,
Yeah.
the part of your question is what are we paying now, right? And what are the operational implications of having to truck the snow further away? I think if we don't have that number, we can certainly get it for council and push it out, but I think that was part of the question.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just thinking that, I mean, sooner or later, there's a return on investment, right? There's a cost benefit analysis that has to occur. And so potentially if it costs so much that we're trucking to Horse Hills, or I'm assuming they're not using their old West End site anymore, but there's got to be a significant cost. I mean,
No,
potentially.
you're absolutely right. It's the overall cost benefit analysis, but it's also part and parcel of the entirety of the capital plan moving forward, right? And the prioritization of that. So all of that is the calculus that the team does work through. Yes.
Yeah, there's also maybe a revenue component too. I mean, if it's all going to Edmonton, Edmonton's making some money, maybe there's an opportunity for us to make a business case for that. But yeah, I'd be just interested in that. It doesn't have, whenever, it's just can be just an information request. And then I know there's lots more questions, so I'll just be the last one. I mean, you did talk about, I know a lot of the cooperation with developers. Some of the new areas are being challenged with where we get complaints that some of the developers aren't clearing their areas as to our standards. And so that creates challenges for us. And then you did touch a little bit on regional cooperation. I mean, and I noticed this year, NACI access was challenging because in the past, I think the contractor that does the Anthony Henday was actually doing a little bit of the Campbell Road access for a long time. Now it's transitioned over to the city of Edmonton. But that bend, it has created a little bit of trouble. There's a bend in the road just as we get to NACI, and I received a number of calls from residents, and I'm saying, well, you can't call me, you got to call the city of Edmonton. So how do we coordinate those requests and is there significant regional cooperation that they'll respond to our concerns? And then also working with developers.
Yeah, we'll start first with the regional collaboration. So during this recent snow event, there was daily collaboration with City of Edmonton and understanding where they were at with their snow dump sites. So to touch on that a little bit, there was everybody looking to remove snow all at the same time, which then inevitably had long queues, which is then not making it or not allowing it to be as efficient as it could be. There was different measures we took as a city to use some of our existing locations that we were able to. As far as the day-to-day networking collaboration, I will turn it over to Mr. Potter to talk about some of the detailed nature of that.
In regards to Naki and Campbell Road, I make a phone call. So typically when those types of, like that would be a situation where you could phone 311 and submit a service request just like we would. But if I'm hearing from our transit partners that the inspector has an issue with getting in and out. There was a couple winters ago, I don't know if you remember, there was a big ridge of snow that was placed. That was a phone call to take care of it.
And then back to the question about the developers. So we work very closely with our planning and development as well as our development engineering group. We have Mr. John Reed on the line here that can talk about it, but we do work together to come up with a snow plan for the new areas as they're being developed, acknowledging that the form of our infrastructure of our city is changing in certain areas. And I'll turn over to Mr. Reed for further comment on the snow clearing.
Thanks, Tim. Just like Tim mentioned earlier, this year was a bit of a challenge due to the volume of snow at the one specific time. So it was a challenge for our developers to get their third-party contractors in place to clear up some of the areas, but we work with them closely and have daily contact with them during those times. They are required to be a part of the major snowfall event removal. So they are required to come in and clean things up. It's just a challenge with the volume of snow that we had this year. So there's not much more to add to that. But yeah, it was a challenging year for them as well as our own teams. But we do work with them quite diligently and making sure that the roads do get cleared in an appropriate manner.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, I know there's been a couple of council inquiries and some returns on that. I mean, those are things that we're working through, and I'm just taking this opportunity to raise them in public. I'll back off on the questions. I mean, if nobody's going to ask the calcium chloride versus sodium chloride question, I'll come back to that one because I think we're going to have to maybe revisit that.
Thank you very much, Councillor McKay. We'll move it to Councillor Hughes.
That's one of my questions. So we didn't really, I know you had 3 questions on the board on this slide previous to this one, but we really didn't discuss any of those pros and cons of anything on those. So why did we back off calcium chloride? I understand Edmonton's going back onto it, or they are on it now doing it. So how can we make a decision about which way to go? What are the pros and cons?
Many pros and cons. I haven't heard that whether City of Edmonton is going back to it. I think there was some social media that went out from the mayor's office that they'd revisit it. Calcium chloride is a very effective tool in anti-icing. My philosophy is not to de-ice with it. I'd rather mechanically remove the snow. Anti-icing with calcium chloride allows me to do that more effectively and easier, less wear and tear on the equipment, less passes. You talked about blade and broom degradation. You don't have to put as much down pressure on. When we were using it, we were putting it on our priority 1 roads in advance of the storm, similar to the north leg of the Anthony Henday. It's a very effective tool in the shoulder months, specifically in the fall, where you don't have a salt residue on the road or chloride residue on the road. So when you get a big dump of snow with a warm surface, the snow falling on that water, that initial is blanketing and creating an ice layer. We've seen that not this winter, but the 2 previous winters, we saw that in that first snowfall, heavy blanket with warm roads, ice is going to build up. That's where it's most effective. So there is absolutely a time and place to use calcium chloride. The important thing is the difference between it and sodium chloride. It can be it's 40% more corrosive than sodium chloride. without the corrosion inhibitor. So there's things like beet juice, molasses that are added to the calcium chloride that acts as a corrosion inhibitor. It's still a salt. It's still a chloride, but it's absolutely effective at preventing snow and ice from bonding to the asphalt in certain conditions, like in the fall.
So we've stopped using it. So what was the rationale for stopping to use it?
Public outcry. You know, we talked about earlier, one of the challenges that we're faced here in St. Albert is that Edmonton gets the media voice. In order to have an effective program when you're dealing with using anti-icing materials, it's important to be able to control the application rate, which at that time, CarMax was doing that for us on Ray Gibbon and St. Albert Trail, and they did have a control when they're applying it on the Anthony Henday. They are controlling the application rate. So, you know, there's different types of calcium chloride from different manufacturers that have a different, whether they're, and any material that we're using in snow and ice control, we kind of get certified from I can't remember, I lost track of the name now, but in Boise, Idaho, it gets kind of certified. But to determine whether the corrosion inhibitor is having an effect to what it says. So it basically there was public outcry with it. You know, it degrades concrete, it degrades their vehicles, it rusts their vehicles. The undercarriage of my vehicle's falling out. You know, all those kinds of things created a storm where it was just easier to say, no, we're not doing it.
Okay. So, I guess people were saying that, was it really because of the use of this? Like, is it because of the heavy use of it that it created that situation? Or was it just a perception? And because I didn't hear that from a lot of people. I did hear it when, I think a few years ago, not necessarily in St. Albert, but in other communities, they applied it too heavily, like just too much of a concentration. And then of course, there's all sorts of problems. Are we just facing the backlash from a too high concentration of previous years at other communities? Or like, is their concern valid? I guess, like, should they really expect to have those results?
Yeah, I think the public perception is based on what people hear in the different platforms. And unfortunately for us, it can be Edmonton focused often. So that kind of prevents us from telling our story. And then the perception becomes their reality. So I would agree with you on that. It's more about people jumping to the wrong conclusion, maybe.
Because I guess what I don't know is how we determine next steps about whether or not we're going to go forward with it, because that wasn't a council decision to do it or to not to do it. And then the other, sorry, hold on a second, is could there be an application on just high risk areas, like where it's like really bad hills, like McKinney, where if it's a bad snowfall or ice, you know, you're praying the whole way up and basically sliding the whole way back down anyway. So is there an opportunity to just say, like, we'll do it where there's a really serious problem and then see that as a pilot again to see how that worked out? Or is there any, what is the intention for next steps to determine if or how we would be using that?
Like Mr. Potter had acknowledged, there is a right application and you're right on it. And there'd be locations where it would make sense to do it. There's a multitude of mechanisms that Mr. Potter has gone through: mechanical, blading, grooming, plowing. Calcium chloride is an opportunity as well. If you're interested in submitting an IR, we could actually lay out what that could potentially look like for the city of St. Albert.
Okay, and so if you chose to move forward, are we going to announce it, or are you guys going to kind of just do it and then we'll see how it goes? Or because we don't involved in this. This is more like an information item for us.
Yeah, and I think what we would do is we would build in that as part of our education that we're providing already. We do have our snow and ice control that is readily available, and we would add in the mechanisms that we're undertaking to enact that
Okay.
program.
The parking ban. So I guess I'll just go all three questions and then I'll stop and let other people ask questions too. So the parking ban, are we looking at like one side of the road parking ban or what are we thinking of on this? Because when I talked to concerns like, let's say from Public Works or your Public Works, but emergency vehicles as well, or transit, like trying to get those large vehicles on the narrower roads, you know, like let's just say that there's a fire on a street, then if they're parked on both sides of the street, like you can't suck it in to get through those two cars. Like, you know, this is the width of the truck. So is there a plan to perhaps address that with just saying one side of the road parking only on some areas?
So parking, for as long as I've been in this business, is always an issue, whether you do it. And you're seeing that now. You're hearing that in the media. For the city of St. Albert, as we talked about the last time I presented before council, this workshop, parking bans are difficult. You gotta, to me, there's certain strategies that need to be done. It's not just about enforcement either. It's not just about having enough enforcement officers. I really, and then our arterial network doesn't facilitate for parking necessarily. So we don't have those problems. And then, so anytime there's a parking ban, you need to give notice. Usually that notice is anywhere between 8 and 24 hours to remove the vehicles. Then you have to have enforcement. Then you have to have, if you're going to tow, you have to have the towing companies available to do that. I'm not sure we have that here in the metro region. I'll give you the example. When we have a snowstorm, what's the wait time for AMA as an example? You know, it can be anywhere from 24 to 48 hours. There's just not the equipment. If we were to implement a parking ban, I think the way that Winnipeg does it as an example is that when there's snow in the forecast on their priority ones, they send out an alert. There's an 8-hour notice. Once that 8-hour hits, the towing companies move in because they're contracted to do that and remove the vehicles. There's no, you know, they self-ticket there. They just remove them, and it's independent of what operations does. It's not up. You give notice and you need to remove your vehicles after the 8-hour warning, even with just snow in the forecast. So maybe something similar to that. The reality is that whatever parking ban is put in place, I don't think the towing companies in the region have the capacity to remove that number of vehicles efficiently and quickly.
So you're looking at really just the parking ban on like the major roads. I don't really think we have a lot of parking on our major roads and collectors anyway.
Correct.
I guess what I was thinking more of is actually like the streets, like the things that you're not removing the snow from as much, but once we do build it up, like on a lot of the Crescents or any of those, like once the snow is removed, you've got those windrows that now encroach into the road, and now you really can't fit cars putting on both sides because the snow is there until the snow melts. So I'm not thinking about necessarily the collectors and handling that because I don't really think that's a problem as far as, unless you're telling me otherwise. I'm not just asking, I'm not asking you, I could be looking at Adrian's area, or has there been any discussion about saying we're only allowing parking on one side of the road during winter months because we generally can't fit wider vehicles through narrower roads when they park on both sides plus the encroachment?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. The short answer is no. And we're not going to do it for this. None of these changes are going to occur during this winter.
Yeah.
Because changing midstream would be a recipe for, I think, a disaster in terms of public communications and expectation. We can absolutely look at that. I understand certainly the premise of your, especially from a first response perspective. We'll absolutely talk to that with the transportation team and public operations.
Okay.
And that's where we sit now. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not expecting it now. I just think this is just a thought that maybe we haven't really thought about. I just had one more question, then I'll stop for now. Back lanes, how much are we plowing the back lanes, and specifically the back lanes in high density areas? Are we doing any any snow removal back there?
Yes, our back lanes, we bring in a loader and load them out basically. So they're kind of done as a cleanup. This winter has been challenging with the steady, like those are the kinds of things that we do after
Okay.
the initial storm, cleanup, looking at piles, removing windrows, cleaning out parking lots. Yes, we do facilitate that type of removal in our alleys.
When we do the removal of the crescents, like, when we say we're now going to do residential street clearing, do we include those lanes in that or no?
They're already done. So yes, so
Okay.
they're done in at the same time the residential roads are done.
Okay.
Alleys are, they're narrower. So you only have once you create a path. So it's the same priority as a residential road, however, but when we go do residential removal, we remove it right out of the alley.
Right. Okay. And the reason I'm asking is because other communities are facing issues where because of the back lanes and we've got all these 4 and 4 plexes back to back, that there's nowhere to put the snow with it, even try to shovel it themselves. And then it's combining and then pooling and then melting and then creating ice rinks and then backing into driveways and backing into garages. So I guess what I'm asking is, so are we recognizing that and moving proactively to try to remove that snow at a higher degree than potentially other communities? Like, I'm not necessarily comparing ourselves, but are we recognizing this is a problem and that we're trying to figure out how to alleviate that?
It's one of the variables that we deal with in snow and ice control. Alleys are, yes, they're tight. We have garbage bins back there. We've, a heavy traffic load in terms of our garbage trucks coming down the lane. And then also if they've got detached garages similar to a cul-de-sac, that's where their downspouts go. When that water hits the lane, it's snowpacked. So it does create an ice and so that was one of the reasons why we bought the icebreaker as well. The icebreaker will go into the laneway and get rid of that snow as well. So, or that ice rather. So yes, we do things a little bit differently, but proactively we go out and try and when we're doing things to proactively set up for the next storm or for the next for the spring melt, those are the areas that we're going into to facilitate that.
I think that the spring melt's been the biggest issue when I talk to other people in other communities is just that combined and just kind of they're forgetting about it. So I'm glad you're doing it. That's it for now, Mayo. Thank you.
I'm just going to call for a 5-minute bio break if that's okay. Thank you. Okay, we'll get back, Counselor Patrick. Oh, okay. Okay, we'll move through questions. I would, maybe what we could do is kindly ask we limit questions to, so everybody stays engaged and we all have an opportunity to ask questions. Maybe 2 questions, 3 at the most, and then we'll, if you have additional after follow-up, please add your name back to the list, but just want to make sure we're all remaining engaged in the conversation. So, Counselor Patrick, when you're ready, we can move it to you. Thank you.
Okay, I had a few questions. My first question is just regarding the calcium chloride. And maybe this is something should be submitting as an IR. So just let me know. I'm curious if we were to revisit using that again, do we know what the impact, does that affect our water with like runoff and impact on the environment?
Yes, it can have a negative impact on the environment, water source. We do have, you know, within our policies and our procedures when we're sanding and use of salt, we follow the Transportation Association of Canada's guidelines for salt usage and report that to them each year. We do have measures put in place to control those application rates, procedures to, you know, turn off that source out of our trucks around our waterways, as an example. And you know, we're constantly monitoring those types of things and working on in our processes.
But maybe I could just say, you know, Councillor, between you and Councillor Hughes, if there's a desire to have a bit of a deeper dive on the use, right, the pros and the cons, right, the sort of the risk assessment of calcium chloride, I would recommend an IR to come forward, and then all of that then could be dealt with sort of more consistent. I mean, the team can give you the initial answers now, but anything more contextual or deeper, I would recommend an IR.
And then you were speaking about like public perception, and I see a lot I've seen this so many times on social media where they say it would just be better if they just left the snow. Like now the roads are so icy, why can't we just leave the snow? And so I just wanted to address that because you were speaking about like when you mentioned public perception, I was like I have myself thought, oh man, this was better when there was snow on the ground. So can you just give me a little bit of like insight into that? And like, is there ever an option where you would say, hey, maybe we would leave the snow because there's so much ice underneath it? Or like, yeah, just a little insight into that.
Thank you for the question. I am going to pass over to Mr. Potter as he's our expert in this, but you're very right. And there's multiple ways to look at this. And as there was a science component of it, I really truly believe, and I've learned this from Mr. Potter, is that there's an art to it. That snow, sometimes a very hard packed snow surface, is a good condition. It's the monitoring of the temperatures. I'll turn it over to John for some more detailed.
Comes down to safety and mobility, Counselor. This year's snowpack as an example, when it started snowing, it was continuous. That snowpack didn't go through any freeze thaw cycles. There was not a ice pack underneath that snow, as an example. On December 29th, by 9 a.m., I had 2 garbage trucks stuck because it was 2 degrees overnight. So not only do we look at snowpack, but we also look at mobility within that service level. Now, I unfortunately can't wait. Like we can't do residential removal. We do it quick, but not overnight. So I have to weigh those options when I see that, you know, the conditions aren't favorable for us to keep the snowpack. If in my experience, if I feel or our team's experience is if we're going to lose the snowpack, we got to make that decision fairly quick if those conditions are present. Sometimes everybody, it's fun to be an armchair snow fighter. As with a lot of things, sometimes they get the decision right, sometimes they don't.
Thank you for that. You mentioned that that sanding recycling is no longer an option. Just curious why that's no longer an option, and when we did have that recycling option, was it beneficial?
It's been about 9 years now, 10 years almost in the metro region. It was a partnership between the waste branch at the City of Edmonton and roadway maintenance, and with a contractor that performed the task. It's just not an option anymore. They didn't see it as viable, I guess. And we were taking the material there at that time to be basically washed and recirculated into the stream. So we were using a non-renewable resource is what it came down to. So it was a nice option to have. Unfortunately, it doesn't exist.
And that's not something we could do ourselves?
It would be an extensive capital expenditure to create that program.
Yeah. Okay, and that was all I had. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Patrick. We'll move to Councillor Bermansky for questions.
Thank you. And thank you, John, for presenting. And I just want to applaud your group. And the one thing I had to mention is, the hand crews that are out there, they're working, up to several hours or the majority of the day in -20 and whatever. So I just want to applaud that group. Do you have a backup crew for those, the guys that are right on the ground? Because I know it's really, really, really tough to get people to do that job.
We have our existing crews, and then we supplement with some seasonal hires.
Okay.
Because of the recent storms that we've had and occurring over the Christmas and the holiday season, our crews were still scheduled 24/7. The hand crews typically only work during the day because they need the daylight. But yes, and so we'll move people around depending on the priorities. So the hand crews that do the front of St. Albert Place also do all the bus stops, also do all the bulb outs, also do the brooming on the 14K of priority ones. If they need to, and if people need time off or they're ill, the tree crew can come in and supplement. And this is where the cross training becomes important. Some of the weed and pest guys also help with snow removal. It's all hands on deck. And if we need to, we can supplement with some casual seasonal hires.
Okay, thank you. I'll try and keep it brief here. Most of my questions were answered, the buyback sound thing and everything else. But the two other things I just wanted to mention from experience and what I've heard from people is when they had the GPS in Edmonton, they had people like, oh, I'm going to go out and talk to the grader driver that's down the street and, and tell him he's got to come to my neighborhood. So that is a risk that I've heard from the public. And in relation, because I was in the car industry, people complained about the pink on their cars because they were using that beet juice, I guess it was, and it was staining and making cars pink. And the corrosiveness of the salt was a huge complaint in the industry at that time. But again, it's probably about the proper mix. So those are two things that I have heard a lot of complaints about. So just in relation to help you, hopefully. That's it. Thank you.
I'll add it if we get an IR, we'll include all of these variables into the response, so that it'll be a very wholesome response to calcium chloride.
Thank you very much, Councillor Clark.
Thank you. And I too want to commend you. It's an amazing experience to drive back into St. Albert after a snow event, and our streets are cleared and other municipalities aren't. So I appreciate everything that you and your team do. A couple of questions. You indicated that at one point in time, temperature wise, our salts aren't effective. At what temperature is that? And would the calcium chloride be more effective at a colder temperature?
Yes, thank you for the question. Yes, basically sodium chloride, rock salt is good up to about -7 degrees. It variable dependent on the dew point and whether it's sunny day, whether what the temperature of the road is and so forth. Calcium chloride effectiveness is about -19 degrees Celsius. So there's that's one of the big advantages of using that in a colder climate like Edmonton, St. Albert.
Okay, and do we heat our sand before it hits the road? Are trucks equipped to be able to spread heated sand?
That's a great question. No, not in the true sense, but when the sand is coming out of off the conveyor into the spreader, we can pre-wet that material. So the rock salt needs moisture to create that chemical reaction. So we pre-wet it with calcium chloride so that gets the chemical reaction going, and that chemical reaction gives off heat. So we add that under the right conditions, that pre-wetting application, we turn it on. We even use it in the really cold temperatures. Pre-wetting that material will allow it to flash freeze to the ice on the road. So those types of things, but yeah, that would generate heat.
Good. And one other question on the 200 kilometers of sidewalks that we clear. You said that we clear them when they become 2 to 5 centimeters. Do we clear them down to pavement or do we have some flexibility to leave like 2 centimeters on a sidewalk?
So on the 14K priority one, that is a brush to ground. That is cleared to ground surface. The sidewalk machines that have the plow on front inherently always leave a slight snowpack because the ground is never completely level. It's never completely flat. So they're pushing as much snow as they can, which may get down to bare pavement in spots, but almost inevitably there will always be a snowpack behind those machines, and that's what they continue to drive over. As that snowpack breaks down, this is where the icebreaker comes in and can break it all up so that then that can be pushed off and the asphalt then can be bare. But over the course of a typical winter, there will always be a slight snowpack on the majority of it.
Okay, thank you. I have a few more questions, but I'll leave it to someone.
Thank you very much. Councillor Cordash?
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Again, just great work. Nothing but compliments, mostly compliments in the last few weeks. So great job to the team. A couple quick ones. Just want to confirm trails like the trails around Lacombe Park Lake and up through Ted Hole Park, all that. Those are considered priority 3. Is that correct?
Correct. They are not down to the sidewalk. They are done with a snowplow. So yes, other than the main area down here, everything else is done with the snowplow.
Okay, and same timelines for priority 3, that kind of stuff. Okay. And then you had mentioned that recycling the sand is no longer an option, and just wondering why that's no longer an option if they're at capacity or they don't do that anymore in the city of Edmonton. And that's just the recycling. We're still picking up the sand in the springtime, so it doesn't end up in the river, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Councillor, we pick up the sand and then dispose of it. City of Edmonton is not doing that anymore. They just didn't find it viable. And nobody in the industry has picked up that as a viable alternative.
Okay, thanks. In terms of the CSRs, I want to try and get a more fulsome picture of what happens when residents call in. I guess there's a few different avenues that they can do so, right? There's the number we have on the back of our business cards they can call, public operations. There's also the Spruce It Up app. And so both of those end up in the same location. And is there any follow-up with the residents to say, hey, here's the action that we've taken on that site? You indicated during the presentation that sometimes it's hard to get back to residents, but does that mean that generally the standard is to try and provide some kind of feedback? I know sometimes and I'll just kind of qualify that. I know sometimes on the Spruce It Up app, it just says kind of your case has been closed or assigned to someone and there's no follow-up.
Yeah, I can take that question. Thank you for it. So as it stands right now, we do have the Spruced Up app or C-Click Fix. They kind of go interchangeably as a name. And that is still picked up by the same team that we have that works as our Public Works Administration team, who also answers the phone calls to the Public Works Inquiry Line. Both occurrences create a work order in a separate system. So the C-Click Fix or the Spruced Up will come in, but it is an isolated, mutually exclusive system that then it goes to. And there is not that circle back to the C-Click Fix as it stands now. Now, that is definitely one of the items that we are working through the CityWorks implementation to correct, because we want to make sure that when a resident wants a response or wants to acknowledge or wants acknowledgement of what has been done, they've got the proper mechanism. As always, if they want to call, they're going to have a person to talk to and are going to be able to get that response directly. But through the CityWorks app, that is one of the mechanisms that we're looping our work ordering, work completion system back into the asset, so that then that will be what you'd say would be like the forward-facing interface to a resident. So we're on the way to that.
Okay, thank you. Maybe I should know what CityWorks is. What's the CityWorks app?
Sure. CityWorks is you might have heard the EMAM. That is
Okay.
the Enterprise Maintenance Management and Asset Management enterprise that we're undertaking right now into implementation. So CityWorks is the trade name for the software.
Maybe Tim, I could just ask you, just looking at timelines, like you shouldn't expect tomorrow to wake up and have that loop complete, right? There's a lot of investment that has to go into it. So, you know.
I understand that's a long project. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Patrick.
Thank you. I just had one more question. Do we have, like, I find sometimes that there can be a delay between like the road getting cleared and then the sidewalk on like major, like long sidewalk routes. For example, Levasseur Road is one that I walk like a lot, daily almost. Is there, like, how do we align, or is there a way to better align that where the snow plow goes through, throws all that snow onto the sidewalk, and then sometimes 3-4 days later, you can't walk. It's unwalkable on those sidewalks. And just, that's another thing I actually see online, you know, on those Facebook's posts and stuff a lot.
Yeah, thank you for the question. Because they are two separate crews, but they talk every day. They know where each other is going. We make every effort to make sure that the snow plow doesn't put snow on the sidewalk and vice versa. We don't need the sidewalk putting snow where it's going to slough back onto the road. The two crews do their best to talk to each other. It is not a perfect situation. The plows, it depends on the speed that they're going to as to how far they expel that snow. In the middle of a storm like we've had lately, those plows are trying to be everywhere at once because that's what people are asking for. So they may go a little quicker than what they should. It puts the snow on the sidewalk. The sidewalk may have been cleared. It may not have, but it's at the end of the day, the crews will talk to each other and say, hey, you know what? I put snow on there. I need you guys to go back. And they will, but everybody's also trying to keep up with their priorities. So it may be a timing issue. They will get to it. They're not doing it intentionally. They do try and talk to each other, but it does happen. And then we'll go back and correct it.
Thank you. Just for like, so let's say we see the sidewalk, it hasn't been cleared. I understand that does take some time for it to get cleared. Is there a timeline where maybe we would say, like if we get an email and we say, okay, has it been 24 hours since that road has pushed the snow onto the sidewalk? What would be like a realistic timeline before somebody should report it?
So while we are in the midst of our priorities, so we'll do priority ones, and those timelines are actually when the snow event has ended. So while it's snowing, we are out there, but those timelines begin once the snow stops. And so as we're going through our priorities, if somebody sees something, errors happen, give us a call at Public Works. It'll get passed on to the team leads. The team leads will go and assess it. Yes, the equipment is out working, but we can direct somebody back there. It's the same with sanding. They can only hold a finite amount of sand on their machines. They may have to go get filled up, but they'll always come back. So just give us a call. And if we've missed it, we'll happily go back and get it.
Thank you. That's really great. And I will say Levasseur Road sidewalk is very good right now. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Clark.
Thank you. The icebreaker, I know it's been in my crescent, vibrates the house when it goes through. Does it do any damage at all to our roadways?
No, it does not. It's not a compactor vibrated snow breaker like some other ones that are on the market and that are used in the metro region. So no, it's just using gravity of the attachment itself to put that point load through the teeth on the grinder. So shouldn't be much of a vibration per se. You probably get more
Okay.
from the grater.
Okay, thank you. The sand, you said that we're disposing of it in the spring. Where are we actually hauling it to?
We take it to landfill. So unfortunately, but we do have to make sure that they can't use it as cover like a clay material, but we do have to get it tested and see what kind of contaminants are within it potentially. So we usually get it at a reduced rate, but it's not at we don't pay for it the same as if we're disposing of garbage as an example. So there's still a cost.
Okay. The parking bounds, talking about parking bounds, if that was implemented in residential to some extent, would that make our crew's job easier? Are you finding a lot of vehicles that are ultimately left parked on the street that you're having to maneuver around?
We have a few more locations as the city grows that are problematic. They're not abundant. I give you the example of the area, the road behind the hospital as an example. Shift workers are working all night long. That's problematic for us. The way we deal with that, if we have to, we work with the hospital saying we're going to come this night. We put out no parking signs onto the boulevard, and then we come in and remove it. That works most of the time. For the most part, our residents have been great at moving their vehicles when we're coming by. It does slow us down a little bit. If we have to come back, obviously that's a little bit of duplication, but it hasn't been a huge issue. But, looking at the future, as we grow, that's certainly something we would look at. But as of right now, it's not too much of a concern for most areas in St. Albert.
One of the things that, we really are focusing on the education component and the social media, updating our website to make people as aware as they possibly can be. Just like, traffic safety enforcement is an option, but it's kind of at the last end of it. But the education is often something that we are finding good success. There are some really unique geometry of roads that, if you've got cars on both sides, it can really squeeze that. And that's where we're looking for the opportunity to clear that, maybe at an off hour or something a little bit as an anomaly. But the education is doing well with us right now.
But in conjunction with the education, it might be advantageous for you to at least have that in your available to you to be able to actually ticket.
Yeah, there's toolboxes is always got room. There would be the different constraints that we would have to work through as we made that decision as a city, and we'd inform you accordingly. Sometimes a parking ban doesn't even reach the levels that they expect, and maybe the parking ban in other municipalities wasn't as effective as it could be. So we want to make sure that we make a very deliberate decision to go that route, or that you could make a deliberate decision.
Okay. And one last question. I know that our community standards bylaw indicates that residents can't shovel their snow onto the roadways. But it's pretty obvious in some areas that they are. Do we have any enforcement on that at all when your crews see that?
We have worked with bylaw MES before. When we see that, it's often the other way around. A bylaw complaint will come in and MES is tagged that resident for a violation, and they ask us to remove it at times if they haven't been able to rectify it themselves. It's my 23-year career. I've seen that quite readily, particularly in cul-de-sacs. But I mean, the bylaws, like you say, prohibits that.
And just to add, like in some of the cul-de-sacs, the front property is really quite narrow. And there's actually limited space to store snow. Some of the residents that may choose to then extend how they're clearing their driveways out onto the roadway. No, technically that isn't allowed. But when our crews are seeing it, we'll come in and do the residential. There was a recent cul-de-sac that we've done where we pile the snow in the middle. But if the residents are piling snow, we can't necessarily see where the edge of the curbing is or the edge of the sidewalk. So we don't necessarily go right to the edge. But those get rectified when we come back to actually remove the pile, because then the loaders can go in and we can actually find the edge nicely. So we've got the bulk of the snow off, but we'll go back and get it. So I know there may be some concerns about drainage and things like that. It's really just a timing issue. We prefer residents didn't put it on the roadway, but in some cases, we will remove it when we remove the rest of the snow.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. I think we're pretty close to concluding the questions. I just had one, just as you were talking about the residential. Do we see or do you experience damage to the equipment as a result of the traffic calming that is being implemented into the city?
One of our processes is to do a pre-winter inspection and make sure that our crews have that time, so that as we transition to an alternate shift in mid-October, part of it is to familiarize ourselves with the infrastructure that's out there, whether it is traffic calming, the bulb outs, or just curb and gutter, or the geometry itself. So I would say damage can occur. Yes, I think it would be just like any other infrastructure that we've got. And Mr. Potter, if you've got anything further.
Yeah, we collaborate with our engineering department on certain designs of bulb outs, traffic calming devices. We did have a challenge. I don't remember specifically which one it was. We had we got we didn't get high centered on it, but we were concerned about it. We did a little test trial before the actual snow flew and made an adjustment to that calming device in collaboration with engineering.
Thank you very much. Appreciate the presentation. I believe that's it for questions. So thank you very much for the time and the effort put into that to bring that to council today. And I think that's a good time to break for lunch. Maybe 45 minutes, half an hour, 45 minutes, half an hour. Yeah, we'll go half an hour and we'll come back. Okay, sounds good. Thank you. Convene and commence the meeting with moving to presentation. I'll move it to Mr. Fletcher for 6.2, which is the Flourish St. Albert's Municipal Development Plan. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I'll turn it over to the Director of Planning and Development here in a moment, and she can introduce her team. Sue, I think you've met them, but just for the record. Again, the intent of this, no motion related to it. It was really just to provide an overview of a cornerstone document in terms of the city's planning hierarchy, right? This is a statutory document. And so the intent from our perspective is to talk about the document itself and not sort of relate it to any particular scenario per se, and really just provide that overview and answer any questions that you may have about the principles that underpin it, right? And ultimately kind of what it is, where it sits, and what it's used for. So with that, I will stop and turn it over to Ms. Peter.
Yeah, sorry, just before you jump in, I did talk to the rest of council. We will, if needed, if there is something specific, we can always program that information piece later. So we'll try to keep it specific to the document and the presentation today. So thank you very much. You can proceed when you're ready.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Today I've got Katie Mahoney, who is the manager of the planning branch here at the city, and Christina Kortmeyer, who is our senior planner of long-range planning. They're going to go over and talk about Flourish. This is an exciting document that was approved during the last council session, and it provides our vision for the future, specifically regarding growth and development. We thought it was an appropriate time for us to come forward and provide an overview on this document prior to the council strategic planning session, so that you can start to see some of the linkages between our big plans across the city and how it informs our decisions and our future work plans. So it's that strategic and operational. So I'm going to pass it along, and just want to say thank you to the team. They put together this presentation in about a week. So just wanted to highlight their dedication to this.
Thank you, Christina. Good afternoon, Mayor Oliveri, members of council. My name is Katie Mahoney. I'm the manager of the planning branch here at the City of St. Albert. I'm here with my colleague, Christina Kortmeyer, our senior long-range planner. This afternoon, we are very excited to share an overview of the Municipal Development Plan, Flourish, and the opportunities it presents as it relates to council's strategic planning for the next 4 years. This afternoon's presentation includes an introduction to Flourish. We're going to talk about what is Flourish and how it was created. We're going to talk about Flourish in action. So this means how the plan is used and how the plan is implemented. And finally, the relationship between Flourish and council's strategic plan. Flourish is St. Albert's Municipal Development Plan, or MDP. It is a high-level, long-range policy planning document that guides growth and development across the city over the coming decades, specifically as our population grows to 100,000 residents and we add around 13,000 new jobs. Flourish integrates the city's environmental, economic, social, and cultural aspirations all under one comprehensive integrated plan. As mentioned, Flourish is a council-approved statutory plan. This means it was approved through a bylaw, essentially making it a legally binding municipal document. Flourish is a foundational document for the city. Other important plans and documents are built on its foundation and further advance the directions outlined in Flourish. For example, our land use bylaw, area structure plans, neighborhood plans, and some of our long-range strategies, including the Green Environment Strategy, which has been completed, and Mobility Choices Strategy, which is currently underway. Numerous important inputs went into the creation of Flourish. The city's community vision being one, best practice, numerous drivers of change, which include our aging population and climate change. Professional expertise, so not just planning expertise, but professional expertise from right across the entire city, including representatives from all departments. Significant community input, and the legislative framework, specifically the Municipal Government Act or MGA, which outlines at a minimum what an MDP needs to include. Flourish was developed through 4 project phases over about 3 years or so, and was formally approved by City Council in the spring of 2021. We kicked off the project with exploring issues and opportunities in phase 1. This included background reviews, key interviews, and our project launch, our City Summit, which was 2 days of community engagement events. Phase 2 involved developing the plan's overarching goals and looking at 3 different growth scenarios. In phase 3, we focused on policy development, finalizing the growth strategy, and as we moved into phase 4, it was all about refining, revising, and finalizing the document. With each phase of the project, there was a round of public engagement, making for a total of 4 rounds of public engagement. In terms of promoting the project and associated community engagement events, we did everything we could to think of to promote Flourish. So some of these tactics include traditional methods such as newspaper ads and social media ads, but we also took advantage of utility billing, notifying residents and businesses of upcoming Flourish events. We attached business cards to every permit that was issued by the city. We had bookmarks at the library. We had pop-up booths across the city, a photo contest, and our Project Champions team. The Project Champions team was an external advisory group made up of people from varied expertise and backgrounds. We took advantage of our city advisory committees and had representation from the following: environmental, youth, seniors, heritage, and we also had representation, and economic sustainability. And we also had representation from the Subdivision and Development Appeal Board, the Chamber of Commerce, Alberta Health Services, and Urban Development Institute, or UDI, St. Albert. Flourish is truly a community plan as it was created by the community. This slide highlights some of the engagement by the numbers. So we mentioned we had pop-up booths. We didn't have 1 or 2 or 3. We actually had 25 across the city at different stages of the project. This included Farmers Market, Service Place, and St. Albert Center. We had around 2,000 views of our City Summit event, multiple questionnaires, open houses, and other community engagement opportunities. When we estimated about how many people we connected with over the 3 years, we estimated in all, we connected with over 17,000 residents. We're going to talk about the structure of the document itself. So underpinning Flourish, we have the community vision, and then we have 9 goals and 42 principles. And one thing to keep in mind when it comes to the goals and principles is that those are the desired outcomes, or the what we want to achieve. When we get into the 450 policies or so, that is the how-to. So the goals and the principles are the what, and the policies are the how. And last but not least, the implementation strategy, which is always at the back and is sometimes overlooked, but equally as important, as that has important policies in there as well. Through robust engagement, we developed 9 citywide policy areas. As you can see, it is very comprehensive in nature. We have green environment, robust economy, housing options, mobility choices, community well-being, cultural richness, resilient infrastructure, great places, and sustainable growth. When you look at the policies in Flourish, not all are created equal. We essentially have 4 different types of policies. As was mentioned before, this is a legally binding document. And actually, we had not one, not two, but we had 3 legal reviews of Flourish because the words in the document matter. To start, we have the mandatory policies. These include verbs such as require and ensure, and these must be met at all times. We have permissive policies that include words like encourage or support. Those have a bit more flexibility. We don't have too many restrictive policies that include words like discourage and limit, as we wanted the document to have a very positive and uplifting tone. And then we have the action-oriented policies, which include verbs like adopt, partner, and collaborate. To complement and implement the policy direction and all the policies, we have 2 key maps in Flourish. This one is our future land use map, which identifies different land use designations across the city. Associated with each land use designation, we have specific policies to those land uses. So for example, I'm in the beige color, those are our neighborhoods, and at a policy level, we have policy specific to that land use designation. The map is very high level and conceptual. You'll notice it has kind of fuzzy lines. And that is because the exact limits and details of these areas are further refined in later planning processes, such as area structure plans, neighborhood plans, and land use zoning. The second map is our growth strategy. This essentially implements the vision and directions set out in the sustainable growth chapter. An interesting fact, when we did our last round of engagement with the draft MDP before I went to council and we asked residents, what chapter are you most excited about? Sustainable growth was number 1. While I won't read out the goals and the principles, you will notice keywords such as land, optimize, infrastructure, and fiscal resources. When we talk about growing to 100,000 residents and adding around 13,000 jobs, this will only ever involve so much land. The city's entire geographic area and development potential far exceed the scope of Flourish as it relates to growth. So from a growth perspective, the priority growth areas identified on the map are essentially Flourish. Having a growth strategy and a document like this is best practice and represents good planning for the following reasons. The realities of market demand. There is only so much growth to go around. Areas unlocked for development, whether it's through servicing, through zoning, or both, does not equate to more growth. It just results in the spreading out of the same amount of growth. Growing in multiple areas at the same time, especially in the context of lower density greenfield development, is very costly. As important as pipes and roads are, much as we know, much more goes into our neighborhoods, such as parks, recreation amenities, trails, schools, transit service, and much more. We have a fantastic online version of Flourish, and we've just done a bit of a audio overview to take you through all the resources we have on. I hope this works. We just thank you for your patience.
And now we would like to take you through a quick orientation to Flourish's page on the city's website. Near the top of the page, you will see a menu of key topics. By clicking on these topics, you will be taken to a new page where you can learn more about the foundation of the plan and its strategic direction. If you look a little bit further down and to the right, you will see a link to the full interactive PDF that can be downloaded to your computer using this button here. Further down the page, you will be able to access land use and development that shows how land is intended to be used, the Flourish maps, which are especially useful for visualizing growth areas and policy application across the city, and implementation to understand how the plan has been put into action. Finally, at the bottom of the page, there is a link to our resource library where you can find great information and background reports that might be useful. There are also videos that you might want to have a look at.
Thanks, Katie. And now we'll move into describing how Flourish is activated in the city. Flourish has an important role in charting out the city's future and giving guidance to lower level plans, resulting in on-the-ground changes. Whether it be the westerly expansion of St. Albert's business areas or redevelopment along St. Albert Trail, Flourish has been instrumental in facilitating those changes. So why do we need Flourish? Flourish enables services to be provided effectively, infrastructure to be planned efficiently. Together, these plans can influence the number of employment opportunities, sustainable and fiscally responsible growth, and good quality of life for residents. By using Flourish, decision-making is strategically guided by the policies so that the decisions are made with direct direction and clear intent. Flourish supports consistent decision-making across the organization. The aim is to offer a stable foundation of predictability for residents, administration, developers, business owners, and anyone else who has an interest in St. Albert's future. Flourish also provides a sort of blueprint of where and when growth and changes should occur over time. These land use and development decisions come together to fulfill the vision, goals, and principles for Flourish. So how does the city use Flourish? It's a key planning and development framework for the city. Flourish informs the direction of both council's strategic plan and administration's long-range strategies. This will ensure that future business plan activities and corporate budgets will reflect the goals identified within Flourish. This will also enable the organization to work towards those shared objectives. The community vision and policy foundation within Flourish should guide strategic planning and priority setting, budget and capital planning alignment, policy, bylaw, and statutory plan approvals, and measuring long-term community outcomes. Council's decisions about where and when growth occurs, such as the balance between employment and commercial areas, and how infrastructure is planned, have implications. Some of those implications are impacts to the long-term tax base, infrastructure costs, service delivery efficiency, quality of life for residents, and business environment and competitiveness. Flourish also provides the approved framework to guide these decisions. Administration uses the plan to prepare accurate recommendations to council, review subdivision and development applications, and plan infrastructure and services, ensuring that actions and advice align with the plan's visions and goals. By using the plan as a shared reference point, the city can manage growth responsibly and consistently over time. Recommendations from administration to council must be consistent with Flourish, as directed by the Municipal Government Act. Amendments to Flourish are subject to council's approval and can have significant impact in achieving the overall direction of the plan. Municipal development plans are living documents and are meant to be updated from time to time. In Flourish, the time horizon for those updates is every 5 years. This is to ensure relevancy, to reflect societal changes, and alignment with the current strategic plan. So some of the questions that could be used when reviewing proposals coming forward where administration requests a decision would be, is the decision we are making consistent with Flourish? Does this decision guide the city closer to the future we all desire? Would the results of this decision continue to support our growth planning and the expected land uses? These questions are intended to be used as a quick check to make sure that we can reach our longer range goals as we get closer to 100,000 people living in St. Albert and adding up to 13,000 new jobs. Now that the vision policies have been written, recommendations prepared and considered, and council's decision-making has concluded, implementation will cause other policies, plans, and strategies to be updated to reflect those Flourish-guided decisions. In time, new proposals will be submitted. We will see community results in the form of new or renewed buildings, road extensions, parks and trails, other services and amenities that come together to form a complete and sustainable community. Flourish and Council's strategic plan are important guiding documents that will set the priorities and policies for the next 3 to 5 years. A strategic plan is typically a 3 to 5 year time horizon, reflecting council's mandate and priorities at a point in time. The current strategic plan describes the areas which council will focus on during their term, and it also provides direction to administration to plan and prioritize in the corporate business plan and inform proposed budgets. Flourish and the strategic plan differ because Flourish is a roadmap for land use and growth, whereas the strategic plan sets out organizational priorities that work together to achieve council's vision. Flourish will take decades to implement and is not intended to be completed within one council term. By revising the strategic plan annually, the plan can respond to today's challenges and opportunities to conform council's priorities. The strategic plan and Flourish are mutually reliant and reinforcing documents, each serving a different role, but working together towards the same future. These plans are like two interlocking gears that drive St. Albert forward to realize its envisioned future by implementing and advancing the vision of Flourish and council's strategic priorities. Together, these documents ensure that day-to-day decisions support a sustainable and predictable future for St. Albert. This chart shows how Flourish, Council's strategic plan, the corporate business plan have all enabled various projects that are either in progress or have been completed. These are a few examples of how Council's work and decisions are guiding the city towards the future envisioned in Flourish. The St. Albert West Area Structure Plan and the Neighborhood Plan are good examples of how altogether these high-level plans enable on-the-ground results, like the Lakeview Business District and Badgerlands, contributing to a more robust and prosperous economy for St. Albert. To summarize our presentation, we would like to share 5 key takeaways that are helpful. We would like you to consider that Flourish was approved by Council and it is the sustainable roadmap for St. Albert's future. Flourish is meant to guide and prioritize growth, development, and municipal investments. Flourish also directs administration's work and recommendations to Council. Council's strategic plan is an important piece to St. Albert's future and should complement Flourish. Finally, Council's strategic plan is how Council moves the city closer to the community vision and goals that are articulated in Flourish. And that concludes our presentations. We'd be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the presentation. It was very informative. I know as a part of new council to get a little bit more detail around it is fantastic. And I'm sure we're going to have a bunch of questions that will come up as a result. So I'll move it to Councillor Cortash to start.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to admin. I'm going to butcher this probably, but Ms. Mahoney, you said earlier in the presentation, you had a slide where you had mentioned, or sort of explained that even though we open up an area for development, that doesn't necessarily increase the rate of growth. It just spreads it out, something to that effect. How do we know what the limiting factor is for growth? So if we only have one area of the city open up for growth, there's going to be limiting factors from the developer can only do so much in a year or different builders. So how do we know whether the limiting factor is us not having enough land for growth or on the developer side? Did that make sense? Okay.
It did. Thank you very much for the question. When it comes to growth, and when we're planning for long range growth, we typically use an average growth rate over the course of 25, 30 years. And historically, St. Albert has always had a moderate and steady growth rate of just over 1%. And more recently, within the province, we have seen exceptional growth rates in Alberta from a population perspective. And even under those exceptional circumstances, our population growth rate edged up to 1.8% year over year. So historically, we've had slow and steady growth rates, and we would expect that to continue moving forward.
Okay, thank you. And so you said we've averaged 1% growth year over year. And so, but this past year was 1.8%, is that right? Or 1.8% across the province or 1.8% in St. Albert?
It was 1.8% specifically to St. Albert based on our last municipal census data.
And that's population?
Population, yes. And that's a little bit higher than what we've typically seen. We typically average just over 1%, 1.2, 1.3% per year.
And so as it relates to Flourish, then we're prepared for 1% growth per year, 2% growth per year? How much, I guess, what are the metrics that go into, how do we plan how much land we need to have available for the next 1, 3, 5 years?
We did growth modeling through the MDP project. So based on the anticipated population growth within a 25 to 30-year time horizon, and then looking at the number of jobs, we were able to allocate that growth to specific areas of the city. And essentially, despite an area being opened up through servicing or zoning even, that doesn't equate to, let's say, doubling or tripling the growth rate. It just leads to kind of the spreading out or the disbursement of that growth.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I may have another follow-up later, but we'll pass the torch for now.
Sounds great. Councillor Clark.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. So the original bylaw was passed April of 2021. So that would put us in line with an update. There was significant community consultation at the time that the Flourish was actually developed. Are we required to do that level of engagement again to update it?
Excellent question. Thank you very much, Councillor Clark. No, not to that level. When we're developing a brand new MDP, the amount of engagement is quite significant. For a 5-year update, there would definitely be community engagement, just at a smaller scale. And we would scope that through developing an engagement and communications plan that we would implement through the 5-year update project.
Okay, and thank you. And I see that there's been a couple of amendments since the original bylaw. Was that just to tweak errors and that kind of thing, make things more aligned, or?
Thank you for the question. I can speak to 2 of those amendments. So there was a significant amendment made when the annexation was finalized. So the annexation lands were brought into to St. Albert. So there was land use designations and policies applied to those areas. There was an MDP amendment approved by the previous council regarding a development proposal in Ville-Giroux. So in order to enable that development to proceed, council approved a MDP amendment proposed by the applicant.
Okay, thank you. And my last question, the EMRB is referenced throughout this document 4 or 5 times. Is that an amendment that is ultimately having to come forward now that they're no longer in existence?
Thank you. Yes, there will have to be some amendments with respect to reference to the Edmonton Metropolitan Region Board, subject to its dissolution April 1st of 2025. So yes, there will have to be some more housekeeping related items related to the regional board.
Thank you. Those are all my questions.
Thank you very much. Just a question. When we look at the longer term timeline horizon for Flourish to be completed and including the growth residentially and commercially, what assessments do we do to understand what's needed on the other side? Because the growth is the one piece in the tangible measure that we can see with residential and commercial growth. But when it comes to the infrastructure and like the capacity of the city, administration's ability to manage it, like what is done on that end to understand that we're growing at a pace that is manageable and that we are not putting growth ahead and then playing catch up with everything else? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it absolutely does, Mayor. And so I'll sort of start with this and the team could certainly jump in. And so the MDP, I think, is the framework, right, that talks about the vision ultimately of the growth of St. Albert and how that works. And then the prospective land uses. This is tied to any number of things. Your debt strategy in the 10-year capital plan is one related significant element. So where do you invest in what, when, right, to enable that growth? And then that manifests itself ultimately kind of in your strategic plan, right, in your budgeting more holistically. And so the modeling that was done talks about the supply of land over a certain amount of time. The trending analysis, right, that the team talks, allows us to sort of frame out what the growth projections are in terms of population over time and how that might manifest itself between sort of commercial and residential, what kind of housing supply is required, what do we need to ensure that we've got an adequate balance in terms of our assessment base, all those goals that you're talking about. And then ultimately, based on our debt capacity over time, what can you afford to do when to set the conditions for success based on that modeling, right, and that particular land use. So that's sort of a high level component to it, but all those things sort of tie together. I will say that we've got a very talented team, right, who kind of works to put data to underpin the decisions, but we're still talking a 50-year time horizon, right? Ultimately, when we look at Flourish, I think I might be getting a little bit high. But there's an element of crystal balling to this too, right? And so I think it does tie back a little bit to Councillor Koratash's question. Is it if you build it, they will come? Not necessarily, right? That's not what the modeling generally tells us. And so, working on historical assumptions, looking at immigration to Canada, looking at net, immigration into Alberta, both externally and internally, all those data points inform what we see in terms of the trending going forward. So that was very long-winded. Christina, do you want to jump in?
That was a great summary. Thank you, Bill. Yes, one of the key components of Flourish is that there isn't a timeline on Flourish. It's really about growing to 100,000 people and the 13,000 jobs. Those are the big benchmarks for the plan. So what we are doing is evaluating. So if we have 5 years where we're at 1.8% annual growth, that means we're hitting the 100,000 person time frame population target faster than we would have originally thought. So instead of it taking approximately 25 years, we're going to hit it at 20. So every 5 years when we're doing our update, and similarly with the jobs projection, we're looking at key indicators, including land absorption, population growth, job creation, to see if we need to advance amendments or a redesign of the municipal development plan. So it may be, the timelines are a little bit flexible because of the way Flourish was designed. But that's some of the key things that we look at as a ongoing. So hopefully that can provide a bit of context as well.
Yeah, it certainly does. And Mr. Fletcher, you kind of took the words out of my mouth when we touched on, I guess, the net positive immigration statistics, as well as the provincial migration that's happening in Alberta over the number of years. And then just trying to get an understanding of like that, almost that stress test that we put St. Albert under, to understand that we can handle, we're forecasting the continued growth, we're understanding what it's going to be, and that we're prepared for it, not necessarily we see the influx and then we got to play. Like, my concern is the catch up and trying to play catch up, because you put the system under a significant amount of stress, both with the debt strategy as well as our actual infrastructure in the city. So this may be another, a longer winded conversation later, but just understanding what we're doing to be prepared for that. And yeah, so it's from a high level, it's good. I certainly appreciate the context. So I'll move it to Councillor Hughes for questions.
Thank you. So one of the key components that you're describing is that you're only allowing or facilitating growth in one area in St. Albert at a time. Are the other areas in the Greater Capital Region doing that same strategy?
Through the mayor, I'm going to start, and then I'm going to pass this conversation over to my colleagues.
Sure.
So there's a difference between prioritizing and allowing. Ultimately, council makes the decision about all growth and investment. So again, there was a deviation that was proposed by the land developer in the Ville-Giroux area. Council decided to approve that amendment, which deviated from the original vision within the municipal development plan. So there's always opportunities for members of the public, developers, landowners to request changes to the plan. Administration will evaluate that and then provide recommendations and feedback. it is important for council to understand that administration must, and especially the Planning and Development Department, has to make recommendations that are in line and in keeping with the direction of Flourish. Because that is council's approved plan, and we aren't really enabled to make any decisions or make any development recommendations that deviate from that. So when you get a response back from us, that's going to be part of the analysis. The growth management plan or the growth strategy looked at some key areas, and as discussed previously, we looked at where the investment had been. The decision was to look at greenfield development to the west, and then intensification along St. Albert Trail and within the downtown as the priority areas. There were some other growth strategies that were looked at, including growing to the northeast over the west, looking at all intensification, looking at specifically only greenfield. So the combination came in growing to the west, and that was based upon a lot of decisions that the previous council had done, and including some additional investments. But we're not the only community that has growth management plans and strategies. I'm going to hand this over to the other team. But I did want to say that there is an opportunity for people to propose changes to the plan if it does not work for them. So Ms. Mahoney and Ms. Courtmeyer, do you mind responding on the growth management strategies?
Thank you. So for example, in the city of Calgary, they have a progressive growth management strategy document to complement their MDP. They also have very specific triggers that need to be satisfied before additional greenfield areas are brought on for development. So like, for example, they need to have get to a threshold of unabsorbed land in the area. There needs to be money for servicing. So just different list of criteria that needs to be satisfied before a new area is unlocked for greenfield development. As well, the city of Edmonton, within their district plans and city plan, they do speak to priority growth areas.
And further to city of Edmonton's planning realm, they do have district plans as well. And those guide strategic investments and balance growth within their current boundary. Also, the city of Lethbridge has an integrated community sustainability plan and municipal development plan that work together to establish a long-term framework for growth that balances economic projects and strategies to form the direction of growth within the city of Lethbridge.
Okay, so I'm still not quite sure what the answer is. So in the capital region, I don't see them saying we're only growing to the west or only growing to the north or east or pick a location. It appears that our prioritizing, is this unique to St. Albert, or is everybody else also doing the same, where they're saying they can only grow in one area, we can't afford to grow in two?
I'll start. I think it's a bit of an apples and oranges question, Councillor, in the sense that, oh my goodness, excuse me, in the sense that the situation facing each municipality is unique. Some municipalities have, quite frankly, run out of land with which to expand and are working on annexation. St. Albert has already sorted that out. Some municipalities are much smaller and don't have the debt capacity, so they're looking at front-ending policies. Other municipalities only have, based on their size, their development is constrained, quite frankly, by their size and the direction. So, the team can certainly jump in on this, but I don't think there's a uniform answer to that question. At the end of the day, the question is what works best for the municipality at hand. So that's not a satisfying answer, I know, in terms of what your question, but I think it reflects the reality facing each municipality is a little bit different.
Okay, and I don't want to debate you. I'm just trying to figure out if everyone else is taking that same approach, like Stony Plains, Spruce Grove, Leduc, or anybody else.
Councillor Hughes, I don't know if we can get an answer to that, to be quite
Okay.
honest. And I would love this, I would love to know that answer, but
I think that we should know that answer, though. I mean,
But-
we
but
should
it-
know what the municipalities are doing.
right.
So that's why I'm
What's the
asking.
relevance?
It's very relevant because we're taking a very unique approach to how we're doing our
Correct.
MDP.
Correct, but I think that's a different topic, and I think what our priorities come out to be through the strategic plan will dictate what Flourish will then respond with.
I
So,
was just asking whether
yeah,
that was.
I just don't know if we're
consistent or
gonna
not.
get to avoid the frustration, because I would love that answer. I just don't know how we're gonna get there, and I don't see the comparable in that sense, because if Spruce Grove or Stony Plain is gonna do it, that's fantastic, and they're gonna grow in multiple areas, or they're not gonna grow at all. The applicability to St. Albert, I'm not sure is there. How we would take that and map that into St. Albert as a strategy.
I'm just comparing strategies, that's all.
Okay.
And then that's the intention, is not whether or
Yeah.
not we're going to do it because they're doing it. But when we approved this plan 4 years ago,
Yeah,
the implications of what happened are not exactly what we approved.
yeah,
So I'm trying to understand if everyone else is taking that same approach.
Yeah.
That's all I was asking.
okay. Any other? I had a question and now yeah, Ken's wearing off on me. Okay, I don't know where that question is, so. Yeah, it's okay. Go ahead, Councilor
Sorry,
Cordesh.
I'm gonna. Am I on? I'm on there. I'm just gonna try and circle back to my question earlier about limiting factors. So we've had for the last number of years, and it's gonna be my characterization of it, multiple fronts of development, whether it's Aaron Ridge, Jensen Lakes, Nouveau, Charo, Riverside, Ville-Giroux. If the number of areas that we have for development decreases, and so let's say we've been at 1%, 1%, 1%, and then the number of areas that we're developing and decreases in our growth goes down to, I don't know, 0.5%, 0.6%. How do we know that how do we know the reasons for that? Is it a result of there's not enough land to develop or not enough capacity in that area? Or is it a result of not having multiple fronts to develop on? I'm having a hard time articulating this question, but trying to figure out the limiting factor. How do we know what's limiting growth? Is it the lands that we have available, or is it the capacity by the developer or the demand? How do we know what the limiting factor is?
Through the mayor, I'm going to try and see if I can help here. So there's a lot of limiting factors, and we're constantly through the planning and development department looking at all of these. Some of them are about immigration, net migration. There's what are the job opportunities within the area? How much land is available for development? What type of land developers do we have? Flourish assumes right now that a good portion of the annexation lands will be developed as part of those numbers. However, you may end up with a landowner who is unwilling to develop because they have no interest. They might be farming. That's maybe their priority. We can't push people to develop their lands. That's not our role. So we look at all of these different things again. Maybe there's manufacturing and investment on the south side of the city that is more appealing, so other communities are growing faster. There could be challenges with our land use bylaw not providing the right type of housing, or our costs are too high here, including our offsite levies, which goes to the infrastructure and the infrastructure investments. So all of those factors have an impact on our growth rate. And we constantly look at them. We don't always know, but we have a good idea. Over the last 5 years, Alberta saw a significant amount of growth. The Edmonton Capital Region itself grew at a tremendous rate. I think somewhere in the order of 40,000 people was last year within the area. So like, we know that we're going to get a percentage of that growth. We also do rely on some of the provincial forecasting as well, and national forecasting. Provincially, that is part of how we chose our growth rate over the next 10, 15, 20 years as we looked at what the provincial models were also saying. But we check those every 5 years. That's part of the update, is to go in and make sure that we're verifying that. The MDP also assumed a bunch of different trends that were going to happen over the next 10, 15, 25 years. Those have impacts on how fast a community will grow as well. So we're going to, over this next 5 years, look at, are there different trends that have occurred? So that is it's a complicated answer. It's a long-winded answer. I don't know if that
No,
helped.
no, that's good. I realize I may have asked you an unanswerable question, and so you've done a great job. Thank you. That
Yeah,
does provide some
but
context.
it's a lot. It's complicated.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Counselor. I guess maybe just to try to summarize, I understand the recommendations that would come forward from administration would align with what Flourish has currently. We'd like to make amendments to that, to what council's priorities are. We can go ahead and start talking about that. I think when we talk about, I brought up the idea of the stress test, or what that looks like for St. Albert. I mean, we look at the priorities in the West and the potential for 5,000 jobs and the investment that's going to come out of it. It's ensuring that we're balancing that responsibly with the growth that would come to house the people that maybe would want to be in our community and live in it. So I understand where Councillor Hughes is bringing forward some questions and where we want to put our priorities, but I think maybe be fair to say, as we go through the strat plan here in a couple of weeks, to really try to understand holistically what we want St. Albert to look like, because there's a lot of integrated pieces into this. So because we don't want to play catch up with the West growing and then there's nowhere for people to go, and we don't want everything to grow all at once and the infrastructure can't handle it. Like it's a fine line and a balancing act, and then understanding what we can afford to do and the risks associated with taking on more. So yeah, I don't, if that's maybe an over summarization of it, or trying to, I guess, put it into context that it's something we really need to massage our way through to understand what those and how those priorities coming out of the strat plan are going to integrate into Flourish. And I still don't remember my questions. So it doesn't matter. Okay, I think that's it. Thank you very much. Certainly appreciate the presentation. Okay, I don't believe we have any emergent items, IRs, notices of motion or announcements at this time. So I will call adjournment to the meeting at 1:19. Thank you very much.